Hey Rick, how you doing?
Hey, good morning, Keith. I'm fine. How about yourself?
Good, good. I noticed that your front door is open. Is the weather just pleasant there?
Oh yeah, it's terrific. We're now I think in the second or third day of autumn, and we've
Mhm.
had a wonderful monsoon season. So it's very wet. The humidity is very high here. It's about 70% now, and our highs are around the San Diego 82, 85 at the max, and our nights are upper 50s, lower 60s. And since we're doing this in the morning, I open up the house around 10 o'clock at night, and it's just gorgeous in the house, and it smells good. It's all of that, that northern Arizona
Mhm.
forest smell.
Oh,
Beautiful.
yeah. God, that's you said that. I can smell it. Because
Yeah.
I've been at your house during those seasons, and so oh wow. Yeah, thank you. That brought
Oh,
me
yeah.
joy.
And the garden is still producing too. I still have my kale. I've got a lot of basil. I have a few
Mhm.
tomatoes left. Got some chard, and the last little bit of my jalapeno peppers are surviving. So been a very long season, probably because of the mild sun and the mild temperatures, along with the really strong rain.
Yeah, our little community garden is thriving now too. We planted it last week, and so things are starting to sprout, and there's so much, joy and energy around it. It's beautiful, and what you just shared with me brought me joy, and that's available in every moment of every single day. So, thank you for that. Speaking of that, you mentioned a topic that we might talk about of how pleasure can lead to pain. And so I'd like you to kick us off on that topic, and then I'll see if I have anything to offer.
Well, I was thinking along the lines of how humans tend to avoid pain, obviously, but they also tend to want to pursue pleasure because they try, I think, to make their lives all pleasure and no pain. But the reality is that there's about an equal amount of each in the world, and it's probably not a bad balance to be aware of the value of having some distress or having some issues that you have to work through, and not have things go completely smoothly. There's an old adage that says that if you're down, be happy because things are going to come up. They don't last being down forever. And if you're up, enjoy it because you're going to come down. And it's not like there's some failure on our behalf if we are finding ourselves in difficult circumstances. It's just part of the cycle, the norm. So I guess what I was thinking about when you were asking about a topic related to this was how seeking pleasure, can really, really turn out to be very painful. And I'll give you two examples in my life. One was when I was a young lawyer and very stressed and had a terribly heavy caseload, probably a lot like the docs at Mayo's. I took way too many cases, and I was trying my hardest to impress my bosses and trying to climb up the ladder and become a partner early and all of that. I got into a cycle that was pretty destructive, which was thinking the worst of people, being cynical, trying to climb over their backs. I didn't care who I hurt to get where I wanted to go, which is sort of the sort of the culture and law. Anyway, I don't know. I'm probably exaggerating it, but if that's what it felt like to me. So that was one downside. The idea that I was hurting myself by having a closed heart, by looking at everyone else as someone just to trample over to get what I wanted. And then secondly, that same kind of hard work caused me to become an alcoholic. I mean, I never admitted this, but I pretty much was. You start up in the morning, get up at 5 or 6, and even if you did exercise, followed by 4 or 5 cups of coffee all day, you knock off work at 6 or 7, and your body's screaming for a cocktail. And I'd have 2 or 3, a bottle of wine with dinner, and then an after dinner drink, and just pass out midnight, and then get up at 5 or 6 and do it again. So that pursuit of trying to have a release, trying to self-medicate,
Right,
that's something that I was pursuing as a pleasure, actually became a pain and became an
right.
addictive behavior. So those are two examples I can think of. I'm sure anybody listening to this can have the experience, can relate to having the experience of pursuing something that you thought was pleasurable, and it ended up costing you more pain. The better way for me to have coped with that would have been to realize that my own merits were good enough. And that if I had any talent and if I was working hard, that the promotion would find me. I didn't have to strive. I didn't have to go out and try to beat people or teach the world a lesson and tell people how much I deserved what I was looking for. If I was talented enough and kind enough and relaxed enough and diligent enough and disciplined enough,
Yeah.
the goodness would find me. And that's really been my experience since all of those hard lessons.
Rick, wow, there's so much there, man, that is just informative. And I just appreciate you sharing. I love, well, you know how I feel about vulnerability. And so we've shared so much. So thank you for being vulnerable about, just both of those, working hard with the discipline of work, but how, doing it the way that you were doing it was causing you to be cynical about other people and to judge them and things like that, moving you further and further away from your best self. And then two, how you would try to balance it out at the end of the day with those behaviors that again was taking you away from being your best self with the drinking and all those things. What God, that just speaks to me. I didn't drink, but my other behaviors were just as destructive with the negative thinking, with the obsessive thinking, this whole perfectionist mentality. I mean, and not only was I not giving myself grace when I fell short of perfection, which is obviously elusive, I didn't give other people grace either. I expect them to live up to the same standard or my expectation, which they were almost always, uninformed about what my expectation was. And so it all created this suffering that you mentioned of this pursuit of pleasure. And the pursuit of pleasure for me was a different form, and it was in relationships, in multiple relationships at the same time. I've been as open and vulnerable about some of my challenges in that area, just as you've been with the drinking, and all of it just caused me pain and other people pain too. And it was that seeking a pleasure was almost always ended badly. For me, and not to judge it, but just to say like it was not in keeping with where I wanted to go, with how I wanted to experience life. It always led to the opposite of inner peace. It led to suffering. So I agree with you. And to your earlier point, what I've learned, what I'm working or moving toward, because I don't know if I'm working toward it, it's just automatically happening, is that I'm just living life and interacting with what's in front of me. And sometimes it just happens to be pleasure, and the other times it happens to be work, And so, but I'm moving toward it. What's happening on this path is that there's not that clear distinction anymore. At least I'm not making it. Like I'm not seeking out to go to work. I'm just doing what's in front of me. I'm not seeking out to have pleasure. I'm just having. It just happens to be an experience that is enjoyable, by every part of me. I feel joy in doing it. And we made this analogy in a previous podcast about being on a tennis court or pickleball court, that you're out there for the fun, but then it becomes work when your opponent starts to, target your weaknesses, and then all of a sudden it's not fun anymore. but I'm starting to see the value and them attacking those weaknesses, because that's an opportunity to make them to improve that skill, and pretty soon it's to become a strength. And so what's bringing me out to the court, what used to bring me out to the court, is I get to have fun and hopefully win. Now what's bringing me out to court is just the experience. There's going to be pleasure weaved in it, and there's going to be some struggle weaved in it too. But eventually there will be no distinction between any of them. But I'm not seeking myself in any of it. I'm just out there having this experience. And what you and I think agree on is that whether the experience is defined as a struggle or work or requiring discipline, or whether it's just pleasure, that eventually you get to the point to where you can't distinguish between the true. You get to the point to where there's value in both. So, for example, and we talked about this before, is that, let's say you're a pilot or a sailor, a pilot or a sailor, we'll take both. As a pilot, when you first get out there, I think most people want, to have smooth skies. A sailor, you want your time out there, you want calm waters. But as a passenger or someone who's in a relationship with or on a team at a company with, do you want a coworker who's only, or a spouse whose only experience in life have been those things that are all pleasure related, that are the clear skies, or in the sailor metaphor, smooth waters? No, because the first sign of trouble, they can't be counted on. They don't have the skills that are acquired along the way of being in rough skies or in rough waters. They haven't been through the storms. You want someone who's been through the storms. You want someone that when things go hard, they're not seeking pleasure to escape the hard part of it.
That's a good one.
Yeah. You want the person who stood in the storm, right? They're not seeking pleasure. They're saying to myself, like, it'd be much easier to go get a cocktail right now. But for me to show up as my best tomorrow, I need to get my sleep. I need to work on this, and I need to work on being free. You want someone in a relationship challenge that doesn't do like Keith 1.0 would do. Okay, this relationship isn't for me. We're on different pages. I'm out, because I need you to be a certain way. So you need a Keith that can work on you being whatever way you want to be. And I can handle you being that way. And then if we're not a fit, we're not a fit. But I'm not running from this relationship or shutting down because you are a certain way. Mm-hmm. No, because I can handle, the rough skies, the uncommon waters. And I think of the same thing when we're talking about, you mentioned the Mayo Clinic doctors. And I think about that. I want a Mayo Clinic doctor, or any doctor for that matter, who's seen a lot of different kind of surgeries. They haven't just seen the surgeons like, oh my God, I get in here and the problem just pops right out to me. Like, I see exactly what I need to do. No, I need a surgeon like, you know what? Like, I've seen this before, but for me to be able to remedy this, I'm not the surgeon who can do this right now. I need to grow my skills so I can become that surgeon. This looks a little bit different, but because they've had this 10,000 hours, all these reps, now when I show up or my loved one shows up with an issue, because they haven't seen the ideal patient, they've seen patients that there's all kinds of things that are going on there, all kinds of comorbidities and all those things that are present, that they have the skills because they've been through so many difficult surgeries that they can do it. And not only that, in terms of their surgical skills, but I need them to also be the kind of surgeon that has not had the A team when they've gone into the operating room. Maybe somebody's been sick, and so there's somebody who's new to the team that's filling in, who they don't give the scalpel as quickly as somebody who anticipates your move. Like, I need somebody who's had the reps of practicing or being with a team that they haven't worked with before, and they can still show up as loving and kind and extending grace. I need that. And so,
effective.
And just as effective, as effective, leaving everyone feeling valued and affirmed, like they made a difference. So because they're not looking for, like you said, seeking pleasure, they're not looking for it. It has to be ideal for them to do their craft, to be better. They're not hiding either, and just leaning on the things that they're strong in. So I think it's both those things, Rick, regarding what the topic that we had is seeking the easy way that leads to pleasure. If you only do that, you don't grow. And
you don't grow, and you miss a lot of life. If we look, one good analogy of this is that we learn after childhood to be a certain way. As you said earlier, sometimes we just play to our strengths, and we never touch the incompetent side that we have. And we have lots of incompetencies that we don't want to mess with, because as an adult, we want to be thought of and respected as someone who's experienced and competent and loving and all of the rest. But we have a lot of incompetencies. But when you're a kid, when you're 5 or 6 years old, you're incompetent at everything. You ever watch kids play? It's just like one long experiment. They're figuring stuff out. They're making things up. It's a joyful exercise in just experiencing being a human being. And so when I think about pain and pleasure, I try to think about me being a kid again, like, a little kid, not a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old. I'm talking about like when I'm first figuring out hide and seek,
Right.
when I first put my little hands on that big old basketball and tried to shoot a hoop and it went like a foot over my head. I didn't stop doing it because, if I failed and I'm no good at basketball. No, it never occurred to me. I just kept doing it till I finally made a basket. It took me about 4 years, but the point is, it's that trial and error and that fearlessness and of welcoming, or not even considering it, not even categorizing
Exactly.
something as pain. It's just experience, right? It's like a kid having experience, figuring out life. And there's a Welsh poet that I really love. He died very young. He was an alcoholic, but a beautiful, beautiful writer. And Dylan Thomas is his name. And as I aged, he wrote a poem, I think probably in his 40s. And it was the couple of lines that I think of now when I want to be comfortable, when that easy chair is calling me. And man, just if I just sit down for a minute and catch up in the game and just, turn all the electronic devices off and maybe sit here for 3 or 4 weeks. When I get in one of those moods, I think of Dylan Thomas, and his quote that inspires me is the idea of not ever giving up, no matter how old you are. And so this is a quote about someone who feels that pull to just stop and just have pleasure and no pain. And it's something like, rage, rage against the dying of the night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Mm.
Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Do not go gentle into that good night. Do not go gentle into that good night. The idea is, unless you're raging, unless you're living like a kid and having these experiences, your alternative is basically to go gentle into the night, which means slipping under the covers and croaking.
Right.
I haven't found that too appealing.
No, man, not when there's so much living to be done, Rick.
That's it.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for that quote. And it's Dylan Thomas.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
he wrote another one you probably like too. I think it's called a child's view at Christmas, or a child's experience at Christmas. Beautiful stuff. He was a terrific lyrical guy. Had a drinking problem though, and died early.
Yeah. Just to close out, my final thought about the seeking part of pleasure is like, before I started to get, in this new space of not distinguishing between pleasure and pain and just, interacting with whatever shows up, was that when I think about the pleasure part of it, whenever I ask a question of my mind, the question regarding the pleasure is what is it within me that I need this, that I feel like I need this, and start to ask like different questions, like not that I deserve it, but like, why do I feel like I need this? It's kind of like, like people, and I used to be this way, that would wake up on Monday morning dreading the work week and saying, I can't wait till it's Friday, because Friday's supposed to be better. Why not ask a different question? Why don't my Mondays feel like they're Friday? Like, that's a choice I get to make. Like, now my Mondays feel like my Fridays because I became aware that it could be that way. So, with over medicating with alcohol, or in my case, with the womanizing, like, what is it? Why do I feel like I need that? That something's missing? Why do I need a drink to take the edge off, of the workday? Why wasn't the whole workday, a great experience for me, to where I need a break at the end of the day? Like, what about every moment being like just a great experience? And some of those great experiences have challenges along the way, but we're not hiding from the challenges and seeking the break on the other side of it. We're not doing that. And you look at anyone who has mastered a skill, and sports are always a great place to look. Like, how did they get to that skill? The discipline that you mentioned. If you ask them, was it worth it? 100%. You ask them that you still had a choice like other people that have, gone into your same kind of craft, that, they decided to indulge in a lot more pleasure. You chose not to. Was it worth it to you? In every case, it was yes. And for me, working on myself in this way, has it been worth it to me? Rick, 100%. To have this inner peace that I feel, man, to not be bothered by my mind all the time. Rick.
Yeah.
So worth it. I'm not quitting early, throwing the towel in, waking up and saying, oh my God, I don't feel like doing a practice this morning. No, not taking a day off to get to what I feel now on a consistent basis, this being my new normal. No, in the morning, there's been mornings I wake up, the pleasure that another 5 minutes of sleep could have given me, transient, fleeting, for what I get to feel like almost all the time now.
Yeah.
100% worth it, Rick. 100%. So you want to close this out with one final thought?
No, I think you just did it. No, that was beautifully said.
Okay, awesome, Rick. I love you, man. Thanks for a great topic.
I love you, buddy. We'll see you next time.
I'll see you next time.